First, the house is amazingly comfortable. From the first moment I stepped in, I just felt at ease and at home. I think that the quality of the light is extraordinary from the sunrise. It is oriented, the longer sides of the house, east and west. So you're getting these brilliant skies in the morning as it comes over Sarasota Bay, and especially in the evening, those Gulf Coast sunsets are really extraordinary. My name is Marty Hilton, and I'm the president of Architecture Sarasota, and we are setting in the renowned Umbrella House here in Sarasota, specifically Lido Key, and in the neighborhood Lido Shores. Lido Shores was developed by a man named Philip Hansen Hist III. He began the development of Lido Shores in 1950, and his goal was to present what he called tropical modern living. So the idea was to take the principles of modernist architecture as it had been developed between the world wars in Europe, that international style modernism, the Bauhaus, also American modernism, this organic approach of Frank Lloyd Wright. But to take those modernist principles and adapt them to the subtropical environment, climate, sociocultural context of Florida's southwest Gulf Coast. Philip Hist commissioned the Umbrella House around 1952. It was completed in 1953. And for the commission, he asked his good friend, Paul Rudolph, an architect who'd just gone out on his own in practice. He'd been here in Sarasota since 1941. So Rudolph came here as a young man. He ended up here in Sarasota. He had a very inspired partnership with an architect named Ralph Twitchell. Twitchell was older, he knew construction. Rudolph went off from Sarasota to school at the Graduate School of Design at Harvard. He studied directly under Walter Gropius, who helped found the Bauhaus, and came back. And he did a series of very innovative houses that got a lot of attention nationally and even globally. And the Umbrella House is still one of the more iconic of the Rudolph homes here in Sarasota. It was not for a client, it was actually a spec home. He wanted to get attention for his tropical modern concepts. So he specifically sited the house in a really prominent curve where a lot of people traveled from Lido Key to the next key or island north, Longboat. And people watched this very modernist, interesting house being constructed with this incredible parasol or umbrella sun shading device, hence the name Umbrella House. So when the house opened in '53, 3,000 people went through the house in 48 hours. There was 9 or 10 living in Sarasota, maybe a little more. But it certainly got the attention that Philip Hist hoped it would. Paul Rudolph was, like myself, from Kentucky. His father was an itinerant minister, and they traveled a lot in the South, so he was exposed a lot to vernacular forms of Southern architecture, which he wrote about and talked about. He went to school at Auburn University. He was introduced to there was a Frank Lloyd Wright house there that got him interested. He came to Florida to see Florida Southern College. He ended up right out of school here in Sarasota. This is where he got his start. So he left in 1958 to become the director of the School of Architecture at Yale. He was tapped. And so he went from, really Sarasota launched his career, which was prolific. Sarasota School, first of all, the name, it was as early as 1966. There was a meeting, a little conference gathering, and they started calling it the Sarasota School. It's obviously not a physical school, but it's a movement with designers thinking in like-minded ways, designing right in similar ways. The values that are shared are this idea of adapting to the local context, again, climate, geography, even sociocultural and the traditions here. There was a lot of innovation, there was a lot of experimentation. Not everything they did worked. And I think Rudolph even expressed later in life he was surprised that some of these houses survived like they did. When the Rudolph houses were built in the 40s into the 50s, there was no building code. The building code in Florida was 1972, so it was like the Wild West. They could do what they wanted to do, and they were. The other values that they shared was that they really wanted design to be accessible to all communities, to everyone, regardless of their abilities. And that good design should promote kind of democratic values, issues of equality. And I think that came as much from Philip Hiss as it did, I think, the designers. So often when scholars, historians, others who are interested in the Sarasota School talk about the residential projects of Rudolph and others, it's about the fact there was no air conditioning, first of all. So how do you design these buildings to promote cross ventilation? How are you controlling that strong subtropical sun? And that's certainly a part of the umbrella house. The jalousie windows, which were pretty ubiquitous in Florida at that time, you crank these things open. These are 2-story, and the module, they were ordered from Sears, Roebuck and Company. That was the other idea about this house, is that you could order, wasn't a lot of custom design, if you will, like components that you could buy at your local lumber store or order it out of a catalog. So that module is actually based, the whole module of the house, on the jalousie windows, their width. I also think the outside of it is extremely formal. You could call it a Greek temple, and if you look at the proportions of it, depending on the period of ancient Greece, yes, I think the proportions are pretty close. It's almost exactly symmetrical in both directions by Lido. So it's amazingly formal. And then you step inside, and he's just having fun. I think Philip Hiss, it wasn't being designed for anyone. I think has so many ideas at that period, and he's experimenting each house. So I think he was finding who he was as a designer. And I think here in the umbrella house, inside, for all the formality, in the inside is incredibly informal. Nothing symmetrical. We have a very early example of a conversation pit. He's playing around with heights where the master bedroom, that comes over one more bay, if you will, to allow for compression above the dining room table. Above me are shoji screens, right, that are sort of Asian inspired. These amazing built-ins that pop out, into the other room. The first umbrella came down in 1966 during a storm. And there were partial reconstructions, but never a complete reconstruction until 2015. The current owners, Ann and Bob Essner, purchased it really just to ensure it would be preserved in perpetuity. So they oversaw the reconstruction of the current umbrella, which amazing, and it's award-winning reconstruction. It matches the original dimensions, it matches the design really accurately, but it does so using materials that are perhaps a little more durable and designed to withstand the wind loads a little better. The original slats were tomato stakes, like tomato plant stakes. Now it's a composite material that's used. So the umbrella was reconstructed, which really brought the building back to life. It was a masterpiece without its most iconic element for so many years. And so it changed everything to have the umbrella back. We have, again, amazing local architects working here today. And there were 2 different architects, Greg Hall, who he oversaw the reconstruction of the umbrella, and then an architect named Jonathan Parks oversaw the restoration of the east wall. But the house is amazingly intact. It has a high degree of integrity, very little changes. And we're talking about all the original tile in the bathrooms, the original linoleum, kitchen cabinets. Thanks to the generosity of Ann and Bob Essner, who are amazing stewards, the umbrella house is really used as a teaching tool, an educational tool. So we do tours, we do a lot of events here, special programs. Our young moderns are going to be meeting here. There's a designer they're bringing to kind of very informal setting to talk about his practice and his work. We've hosted our Hiss Award that we give away every year to designers and champions of innovative and good design. We held it here last year, 200 people around the pool. It's really it's almost like the living room of Sarasota, I feel like. We do Mod Weekend each year, the second weekend in November. This past year was the 10th consecutive. And there usually is a tour here in Lido, because there are quite a few homes, both older homes that have been sensitively rehabilitated, maybe added on to, new houses as well. Again, the Sarasota School is still very much continuing. So it's one of the highlights is the Lido Shores home tour, and umbrella is always the center of the celebration. Architecture Sarasota was created, it'll be 3 years in July, when two existing nonprofits merged, the Sarasota Architectural Foundation, which would have been 20 years old, and the Center for Architecture Sarasota, which would have been 10. And it was the merging of those two that led to our bifurcated mission, to preserve the past and to also help promote good design in what we call the global built environment. So that idea of looking to the past to inform the future is the space that I love to operate in. And so to meet our mission, we do quite a few things. One is we have regular programming, tours, of course, lecture series. I don't know that most people really stop to think about the role of design in their lives on a daily basis. I mean, it influences everything, right? Where we live, where we work, where we play, where we recreate, even urban design, even how we get from one place to the other. So our role is to really elevate that awareness and to use that design thinking to help address key challenges that the community faces. And these challenges are, we want to be a model for other places. So these are challenges. Coastal resilience is very important. Attainable, affordable housing is really, an issue, not only here, but in other places. So these are the types of research projects, the types of community programs that we're developing.